There is a moment that comes into every person's life, though many fail to recognize it when it arrives. It is not announced by thunder. It does not come with a sign in the sky. It often arrives quietly, disguised as frustration, disguised as waiting, disguised as another day that looks exactly like the day before. Yet beneath the surface of that ordinary moment, something extraordinary is taking place. Something is shifting, something is moving, something is preparing itself to emerge into your experience. And if you are hearing these words right now, there is a reason for it. You may feel as though you have been walking a long road. You may feel as though you have prayed, imagined, believed, hoped, affirmed, visualized, and still the evidence you seek has not fully appeared. There may be moments when you wonder whether anything is happening at all. There may be moments when you question whether you are truly moving forward. But understand this, the greatest transformations often happen in silence. The most powerful changes occur beneath the surface, long before they become visible to the eye. Think about a seed buried deep within the earth. From the perspective of someone standing above the soil, nothing appears to be happening. Day after day, the ground looks unchanged. Yet beneath the surface, a miracle is unfolding. The seed is breaking apart. New life is emerging. Invisible roots are stretching into the darkness. Growth is taking place where no one can see it. The truth is that consciousness works in much the same way. Most people judge their progress entirely by external evidence. They look at their bank account, their relationships, their circumstances, their opportunities, and they decide whether they are advancing based upon what they can physically observe. Yet, consciousness does not operate according to appearances. Consciousness creates appearances. There is an enormous difference between those two realities. You must realize that the outer world is always the last thing to change. The inner world changes first. This is why so many people quit just before their breakthrough arrives. They mistake invisible movement for no movement. They mistake silence for absence. They mistake preparation for delay. They mistake transformation for stagnation. And because they cannot see what is happening beneath the surface, they conclude that nothing is happening at all. But imagine for a moment that you could see what your consciousness sees. Imagine if you could witness every assumption taking root within your subconscious mind. Imagine if you could observe every new identity beginning to replace an old one. Imagine if you could watch the invisible rearrangements occurring within the deeper layers of your awareness. You would never doubt again. You would never panic again. You would never wonder whether progress was occurring, because you would realize that what appears to be stillness is often the most active stage of creation. Neville Goddard spoke repeatedly about the interval between assumption and manifestation. He understood that there is a period of gestation. Just as a child requires time to develop within the womb, every assumption requires time to mature within consciousness before it emerges into visible expression. Yet most people become frightened during this period. They plant a seed and immediately begin digging it up. They assume a new identity and then spend the rest of the day checking whether it is working. They enter the state of the wish fulfilled and then abandon it the moment circumstances fail to cooperate. This is not because they lack intelligence. It is because they have been conditioned to trust appearances more than consciousness. But appearances have never been the source of reality. Consciousness is. Let that sink into your spirit. The reality you desire is not being created somewhere outside of you. It is being created within you. Every day that you persist in a new assumption, you are strengthening it. Every day that you return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are deepening it. Every day that you refuse to identify with old limitations, you are weakening them. You may not see immediate evidence. You may not receive instant confirmation. You may not experience dramatic signs. But something is happening. Something is always happening. Consider this. A sculptor begins with a block of stone. The masterpiece already exists within the imagination of the artist long before it becomes visible to anyone else. At first, observers see only stone. The artist sees a masterpiece. The observer sees no progress. The artist sees inevitable completion. Who is correct? Both are observing different stages of the same reality. The observer judges by appearances. The artist judges by vision. You are being invited to become the artist of your own consciousness. You are being invited to trust what you know internally more than what you temporarily observe externally. This is faith in its deepest sense. Not blind belief, not wishful thinking, not positive thinking. Faith is inner knowing. Faith is certainty before evidence. Faith is the ability to remain loyal to an unseen reality until it becomes visible. Think about this for a moment. Every great achievement in human history existed invisibly before it existed physically. Every building was once an idea. Every invention was once imagination. Every relationship was once possibility. Every transformation was once unseen. The invisible always precedes the visible. This is law. this is order, this is how creation works. And because this is how creation works, you must learn to become comfortable with the unseen stage of your journey. You must become comfortable with progress that cannot yet be measured. You must become comfortable with transformation that has not yet become visible. You must become comfortable with growth that occurs beneath the surface. Because the moment you become comfortable with that stage, you stop interfering with it. You stop forcing, you stop doubting, you stop checking, you stop measuring, you begin allowing, you begin trusting, you begin knowing. And knowing possesses a power that striving can never access. Notice what happens when a person truly knows something. They become calm, their energy changes, their posture changes, their breathing changes. They no longer chase because they no longer feel separated from what they desire. The frantic energy disappears, the desperate energy dissolves, the neediness fades. And in its place emerges a quiet certainty. This certainty is one of the greatest indicators that consciousness has begun to shift. The old identity is frantic, the new identity is settled. The old identity worries, the new identity trusts. The old identity seeks proof, the new identity rests in knowing. This is why the journey is never really about acquiring something external. It is about becoming someone internally. The outer manifestation is simply the visible confirmation of an invisible transformation that has already occurred. You are not becoming wealthy, you are becoming the consciousness of abundance. You are not becoming loved, you are becoming the consciousness of love. You are not becoming successful, you are becoming the consciousness of success. And once consciousness changes, the external world must eventually follow. It has no choice. Because the outer world is not the cause, it is the effect. The inner world is the cause. Feel this deeply. Every fear that tells you nothing is happening is simply the voice of an old identity fighting for survival. The old self does not disappear quietly. It resists, it argues, it questions, it attempts to pull you back into familiar patterns. This is normal, this is natural, this is part of the process. Imagine a room that has been dark for years. The moment light enters, darkness appears to resist. Yet darkness possesses no actual power. It cannot stop the light. It can only appear to linger temporarily while the light continues expanding. Your old assumptions are exactly the same. They possess momentum, but not authority. They possess familiarity, but not truth. They possess habit, but not power. The power belongs to consciousness. The power belongs to awareness. The power belongs to the identity you consistently choose. You must understand that every day you persist in a new state, you are weakening the influence of old assumptions. Even when it feels difficult, even when doubts appear, even when circumstances seem unchanged, progress is occurring, movement is happening, transformation is unfolding. You are closer than you think. Not because someone wishes it to be true, not because it sounds encouraging, but because consciousness operates according to laws. And when those laws are understood and applied, results become inevitable. The farmer understands this. After planting seeds, the farmer does not wake up every morning asking whether the process is working. The farmer understands the law of growth. The farmer understands timing. The farmer understands gestation. The farmer understands that unseen development precedes visible harvest. Because of that understanding, the farmer remains peaceful while waiting. You are being asked to develop that same relationship with your own consciousness. You have planted assumptions, you have planted identities, you have planted visions, you have planted beliefs. Now allow them to grow, trust them, nourish them, protect them, remain loyal to them, and continue moving forward. There is another reason many people fail to recognize how close they are to transformation. It is because breakthroughs rarely arrive the way they expect. The human mind loves prediction, it loves certainty, it loves control. Yet consciousness often works through pathways you could never have planned. Opportunities appear unexpectedly, connections emerge unexpectedly, insights arrive unexpectedly, doors open unexpectedly. What appears to be coincidence is often consciousness expressing itself through channels beyond the awareness of the logical mind. This is why surrender becomes so important. Not surrendering your desire, not surrendering your vision, surrendering your need to control the process. Because control creates tension, and tension blocks receptivity. The moment you stop trying to force the path, you become available to pathways you could never have imagined. Allow yourself to see how liberating this is. You do not need to know every step. You do not need to understand every detail. You do not need to predict every outcome. You simply need to remain loyal to the identity that corresponds with the reality you desire. Everything else begins organizing itself around that decision. The universe has always responded to identity, not effort, not struggle, not wishing, identity. What you consistently believe yourself to be becomes the organizing principle of your experience. If you believe yourself abandoned, life mirrors abandonment. If you believe yourself unlucky, life mirrors limitation. If you believe yourself supported, life mirrors support. If you believe yourself worthy, life mirrors worthiness. The mirror never argues, it only reflects. And because it only reflects, your greatest power has always been your ability to choose what stands before the mirror. This realization changes everything. Suddenly, circumstances lose their ability to intimidate you. Challenges lose their ability to define you. Temporary setbacks lose their ability to discourage you. Because you understand that none of these things possess creative authority. They are effects, not causes. You are the cause. Your state is the cause. Your consciousness is the cause. And as long as the cause remains intact, the effect must eventually follow. Think about the story of David standing before Goliath. Most people focus on the giant. Few focus on David's consciousness. Everyone else identified with limitation. Everyone else identified with fear. Everyone else identified with appearances. David identified with something greater. His outer circumstances were not favorable. His physical advantages were minimal. His odds appeared impossible. Yet his inner identity remained untouched by appearances. And because his consciousness remained aligned with a greater reality, the outer world eventually reflected that alignment. The story is symbolic. It reveals a universal principle. Your giants are appearances. Your power is consciousness. And consciousness always possesses greater authority than appearances. You are closer than you think, because the moment an identity becomes stable, reality begins reorganizing around it. Sometimes that reorganization occurs slowly. Sometimes it occurs suddenly. But it always begins internally before it appears externally. This is why your responsibility is never to force results. Your responsibility is to remain faithful to the state. Remain faithful to the vision. Remain faithful to the identity. Remain faithful to the feeling. The results belong to the law. The law handles the manifestation. You handle the assumption. And the more deeply this understanding settles within you, the more peaceful your journey becomes. You stop measuring every day. You stop counting every setback. You stop obsessing over timelines. You begin living. You begin trusting. You begin embodying. You begin becoming. And in that becoming, reality starts changing in ways that often surprise even you. There is a quiet moment that eventually arrives when you realize you are no longer the person who began the journey. You notice your reactions have changed. You notice your expectations have changed. You notice your emotional patterns have changed. You notice your conversations have changed. You notice your relationship with yourself has changed. And suddenly you understand something profound. The manifestation was never merely about obtaining an outcome. It was about becoming someone new. The outcome is simply evidence of that transformation. The true miracle is the transformation itself. Because once consciousness changes, an entirely new life becomes available. You begin seeing opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You begin experiencing possibility where you once experienced limitation. You begin expecting support where you once expected struggle. And because expectation influences perception, perception influences action, and action influences experience, your entire reality starts moving in a new direction. This is not magic. This is consciousness expressing itself through the structure of human experience. You are closer than you think, because every moment you choose a higher assumption, every moment you return to the feeling of fulfillment, every moment you refuse to identify with old limitations, you are moving deeper into alignment with the reality you seek. And alignment always precedes manifestation. The bridge is already forming. The pathway is already unfolding. The unseen movement is already occurring. Even now, as you hear these words, assumptions are shifting, perspectives are changing, possibilities are expanding. Something within you is remembering what it has always known, that you are not powerless, you are not forgotten, you are not separate from the creative force that shapes reality. You are an expression of that force. You are consciousness itself becoming aware of its own creative authority. And when consciousness awakens to its authority, everything begins to change. Not all at once, not always dramatically, but steadily, surely, inevitably, like dawn arriving after a long night, like roots becoming trees, like rivers finding the sea, like a seed becoming a harvest. The movement may appear slow while it is happening, yet one day you look back and realize everything changed, everything moved, everything transformed. And what once felt impossible now feels natural. What once felt distant now feels familiar. What once felt uncertain now feels obvious. That moment is closer than you think, closer than your fears suggest, closer than your doubts suggest, closer than appearances suggest. Because the deeper truth is that the reality you seek is not traveling toward you from some distant place. It is emerging from within you. It is growing inside your consciousness. It is taking shape through your assumptions. It is strengthening through your persistence. It is becoming real through your willingness to remain faithful to an unseen reality until it becomes visible. And every day you continue, every day you trust, every day you return to the state, every day you choose the identity over the appearance. You move another step deeper into the life that has already begun forming beneath the surface, waiting patiently for the moment when what has been growing invisibly can finally reveal itself in the light of your experience.